Hello, everybody, and welcome into Blue Jays Today, where we always have some say about the Toronto Blue Jays. Coming to you from the Sports Interaction Studio, I'm your host, Nicholas Playlaw.
And I'm your host, Adam Peddle. And over the weekend, we got a few pretty exciting Blue Jay free agent news and updates. One kind of pitcher that we haven't even talked about the Blue Jays are pursuing. We're going to break down who that is and talk about whether we want the Blue Jays to get that guy. And also a couple more updates on some other pitchers and some position players that we've talked about so far on this channel. Before we get into it, though, make sure to hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. Also, hit that hype button because it's pretty freaking hype this Blue Jays offseason. Things are going pretty crazy right now in terms of the rumors and the news. Hopefully, we get a signing soon. Here's the big update, everybody. Raisel Iglesias, the Blue Jays are now pursuing. This is according to Francis Romero. He was involved, if you remember correctly, in the Anthony Santander kind of sweepstakes. He was kind of talking about the Blue Jays were in on him, and what do you know? The Blue Jays did get him. So we believe in Francis. We apologize because we were doubting him, but he's now coming out and saying the Blue Jays are pursuing free agent right-handed pitcher Raisel Iglesias. And he's a pretty damn good pitcher, near the back half of his career, but a pretty damn good pitcher now.
Yeah, I'm very interested in him. This past season had an ERA of 3.21, a whip under 1 right there, which is really nice to see because you know that a lot of people in that Blue Jays bullpen, looking at Brendan Little, looking at Sir Anthony Dominguez, they had their issues with letting people on base. And there's something to be said, man. It's tough to score runs when you can't get on base, right?
Yeah.
It is. So he is very good at that, and he had 29 saves this past year with the Atlanta Braves. In seasons prior with them, he's had over 30. Honestly, I think the lack of saves is less to do with him and just more to do with that there was less opportunities for saves with the Atlanta Braves this past season. The one concern is that he is 35 years old, but honestly, like I said this on a previous podcast, relief pitchers, because they don't have to throw nearly as much as a starter, they only throw effectively 1/3 of the amount of innings, feels like they have a bit more longevity to them. And we did just see Aroldis Chapman, who a couple years ago felt like his career was done, it was dusted. You know, now he comes back as a resurgence and wins closer of the year and has his best season ever coming out of the pen. So I'm not going to hold the age against him at all. This is a very, very solid baseball player. And if they're seriously looking at potentially upgrading from Jeff Hoffman, I think that this is a reasonable option.
Yeah, like this is at least, going to be a competitive force in that bullpen for the closing role against Jeff Hoffman, because you look at the numbers and you look at the veteran leadership and the track record of how many seasons he has been a closer. I like Raisel in that closing role. And also, too, if you are worried about the age, you're probably not going to get this guy on a 3-4 year deal considering the age. You got Spot Racket here projecting he's going to get a 2-year, $17 million. I could see easily 2-year, $20 million. Bam, done. You're dusted. It's over. And for a Raisel Iglesias, and I think that's a little bit of a steal if I'm going to be honest, because it looks like he's still got very good stuff. The breaking ball hasn't been so good last year, but the fastball is just phenomenal. It was in the 90th percentile last year, and you got 13 run value on it. Very, very good. At least like that fastball, all I need you to do is come in and, and get people to swing and miss and have weak contact on your fastball and your sinker. And that's what he did last year. Not a lot of strikeouts and swing and miss stuff from him like he had in the past, but still a guy, all I need is outs. I don't care how you do it. I know we're so used to Trey Savage being sexy in the strikeouts, but I don't care how you do it. Just give me 3 outs.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the problem. Jeff Hoffman was incapable of doing that at certain points of this season. And I do think that should, Raisel be added to this Toronto Blue Jays squad, I think that he'd enter in as the closer, right? I know that, Hoffman had his moments and he was awesome, but at the end of the day, you are still talking about a guy who last season had a 4.5 ERA. And, last year, Raisel Iglesias had a ERA point better than that. And in his career has been significantly better than that. So this is honestly, I don't want to make a crazy comparison here, but it feels like this is like Edwin Diaz, but, 4 years later type thing, like a bit older, like still an individual who's had an incredible career every season, seemingly very good at ball. I don't want to say he's quite in that same tier right now, but still a very, very solid addition. And if they wanted to bring him into this pen, I'm thinking to myself, all right, that's our 9 guy. Now you get to play with Jeff Hoffman as, that setup guy, whether that be in the 7th or the 8th, depending on where the meat of the order is. Okay, you can slot him in right there. You're going to have Jimmy Garcia in this mix. And then, of course, you're going to have Louis Varland in all this as well, who was just a dog down the stretch workhorse for the Toronto Blue Jays, played in like 95 95% of the playoff games that they had right there. So I'm liking that pen a lot more with this addition if they were to go out and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving everybody down never hurts, especially adding a guy who is a veteran closer like Rysel. Now we did hear that Nick Sandlin has been removed from the 40-man roster. And that was one of the options we were talking about in our previous videos, that could be a guy filling in the depth there. No longer with the team, unfortunately. I wish we could have saw more of him. Injuries got the best of him. So once you add Rysel, I think it's very easily you go out and add another couple complementary pieces down in the middle. You did all the heavy lifting going getting Rysel. Now go get the complementary pieces, and I think as Ross Atkins, you can be very satisfied walking into 2026 with that good
especially as well if they were to go out and get a starter too, because we know that obviously plays into all of this as well. You go out, you get one more starter on top of adding, an Iglesias, and on top of maybe one or two just mid to bottom end guys in that pen, and all of a sudden it is now thick, it is deep, you have all the depth that you need. You'll probably have some of those, bullpen guys maybe even starting in AAA for you, right? Honestly, if they were to go and make that move, I know it's not as sexy as the Edwin Diaz, but they'd be saving some money. I still think it'd be very, very valuable, me. And I think that that's where they should be looking right now. Now, that's not the only update that transpired over this weekend. And the stove is hot right now, guys, and it's going to continue to get hotter as we get to winter meetings. So if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the Blue Jays content and the Blue Jays coverage. This is from MLB Network. They were talking about Tatsuya Ime. This is the guy over there in Japan. Phenomenal pitcher over there in Japan for a few years now. He has been posted, and he is looking to come over to MLB. They are talking, or revealing, the teams that he could come to. And the teams that they mentioned were the Jays, the Phillies, the Mets,
and the Yankees.
Yeah. Okay, so interesting that they didn't actually bring up the Dodgers there at all. I guess the Dodgers rotation is just too fucking stacked at this point, where it's like we don't need anyone else. It's just actually kind of true.
And honestly, no disrespect to Ime, but the way they're talking about Ime is that he's going to be a 2-3 pitcher in their rotation, whereas you got the Dodgers, you got a bunch of ones. Right. You know what I mean? So it's and maybe you want Roki to come in and fill in that fifth spot one day. So it almost feels like they don't need him because they have too many good players, which is a curse, I guess. For
life of luxury over there in LA. But either way, we'd be happy to have him.
We'll be so happy, right? Because Tatsuya Ime has been phenomenal the last couple seasons in Japan. He's at a 1.92 ERA, a 2.34 ERA. The WHIP, like you mentioned with Rysel, under 1. And for a pitcher, starting pitcher, that's really hard to do. Now, the one thing is he's got to be able to have some command, and that is what I'm doing some research on him, because we are getting in more talks involved with him. That's the big thing. He has a little bit of command issues,
which is strange because his whip was under 1.
It was under 1.
I guess he just limits the hit so much
that's right, and he has a lot of swing and miss stuff, right? So 4.4 balls per 9, or base on balls per 9 is what he had over his 8 seasons. That's over the course of 8 seasons. But if he can come over here in MLB, figure out the command, we have to be able. It is still a tough transition. People think that we've seen some great players over the last few years from the MPB come over and transition flawlessly. It's still a tough transition for these guys who aren't the, Yamamotos of the world, but you got to go and make that transition and get comfortable. So if we can do that, adding this guy as a 2-3 in the rotation, I would still say is pretty solid. I know that we want that locked in number 1 dude, but hey, you get a guy here who could be your 2-3 for the next 5 years. That's still good, and that's still following along with the plan of, okay, we know in 2027 we're going to have a lot of turnover in that rotation. Well, at least we have Ime coming in and being a solid force.
Well, and frankly, that's just what people are projecting right now, too, is that he'd be a 2 and a 3. But nobody really knows, okay? That's what we're saying right now, and that's what he'd get paid as, which I think is really cool. But there's still also the upside of being a 27-year-old. It's he did just have, on paper, what he just did on paper was have an ERA under 2 and a whip under 1. And, again, that Japanese league, the competition and the caliber of play over there has certainly risen a lot over the last couple of years. I'm not saying that it's fully at MLB level just yet, but there are some really good baseball players over there. So to have an ERA under 2 and to have a whip under 1 in your age 27 season, I'm feeling pretty good about it. So yes, it's still not as, I guess, enticing as Ranger Suarez, who's proven it time and time and time again at the MLB level. But I do think that there definitely be some upside still with the Tatsuya Ime that you could get behind and you could feel excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I think of it this way, right? Like when you looked at a rotation a couple of years ago, I was really confident and comfortable having Kevin Gausman being the locked-in ace, Jose Barrios being that solid 2-3 dude, and then everybody else kind of coming in and complimenting, like Chris Bassett and Max Scherzer's over the years, the Kikuchis over the years. Tetsuya Ime could just be like another Jose Barrios at his worst. And if he figures out the command problems, you could be on number one, right, in any given year.
Well,
so.
And also, too, I mean, they're given those command problems. I'm assuming that that's kind of more of a cherry pick stat over the course of his whole career.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's fair, but okay, he was walking people when he was 22, right? Like we're a completely different guy at this point. I'm looking at what have you done for me recently, and recently the past few seasons right there, the whip is looking phenomenal. And in fact, you can look at it, right? In 2024, the whip is at 1.1, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
and the walks are down to a 3.6 and a 2.5.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that number is kind of being drawn from, a few of those earlier 2020 years, which, if you've already sorted that out, awesome. Come over to MLB, maybe that's still there, but I still think that there's a little, or not a little bit, a lot of upside actually with Tatsuya right here, and it'd be over the moon if they wanted to go and they wanted to make that happen. Final tidbit of information right here. We got to give you the update on Kyle Tucker. This is coming from Jon Heyman. Of course, everybody is still talking about this. We got our first big signing over the weekend in Josh Naylor. Not saying that that's about to open the Kyle Tucker floodgates or anything, but you are going to start to see some of these things trickle through, and this is that one big domino. Jon Heyman came out and spoke about it and says that he doesn't think the Yankees or the Mets are the squads for Kyle Tucker. Now, you had some thoughts on his reasoning behind this.
The reasoning was effectively like, okay, they already have right fielders in Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, who I think we can all agree are probably two better players, than Kyle Tucker, and they're getting paid respectively so. So, I mean, you could make that argument, but if I'm the Yankees and I have an opportunity to get Kyle Tucker, I don't really care. Like, I'm moving you to center field. I'm moving you to left field. I don't care. DH, I do not care. I'm going to go get a Kyle Tucker to fill out the outfield. So I kind of disagree with him right there. Same thing with the Mets. I mean, they were talking about moving Kyle Tucker to center field, and then you got Juan Soto over there in right field. So for me, it really doesn't matter. So his reasoning, I would kind of nullify. I'd still give the Yankees and Mets just as good of a chance as the Toronto Blue Jays is being aggressive for Kyle Tucker.
Potentially. I look at the New York Mets. I don't think that they're honestly in the mix at all. And this is when I put my GM hat on. I think that they have bigger fish to fry. Like they just paid they just paid the outfielder, the big bucks right now. Do you really want to have $1.3 billion in the outfield or whatever that money would work out to in total contract allocations, when also you need to go out and you need to get a bunch of starting pitching? Like for me, if I was to put my GM hat on, I think that that's where they're going to go. Yankees, I could see them wanting to capitalize on the Aaron Judge window and win a chip with him, so I could certainly see them in the mix. But again, to Jon Heyman's point, I think what he's really trying to say here is like, that's a lot of money to be had in just that outfield spots right there. And are the Yankees willing to do that? Maybe. It's the New York Yankees. They're fucking nuts, but maybe not.
Yeah. Well, regardless of like whether it be like on the outfield or whatnot, it's in the player payroll. Now you can make the same argument about the Blue Jays. Like they just gave $500 million to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Now I know he's on the outfield, but you're still paying $500 million to a guy, and they just did that. Whereas like we're kind of like, all right, well we can go get Kyle Tucker, and we're okay with that.
I understand. Look, I'm just trying to listen to this or look at this from Jon Heyman's perspective, and I think that where he's coming from is that's a lot of money into that one position group.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hey, look, Kyle Tucker is one of a kind. I would find a way to make it work, just like the Blue Jays, right? I mean, I know it's obvious. Kyle Tucker over Anthony Santander, over anybody in that outfield. You go make it work. But, it's pretty full out there when you consider you got, an Anthony Santander, Varsho, and then other complementary pieces. But you'll find a way to make it work.
You would, sure because, unlike, and to your point when you brought it up, right? Like Soto, Judge, certainly, I think better, greater than Kyle Tucker. Tucker, greater than everyone in the Toronto Blue Jays outfield, right? That's just the way of it. And the great thing about Kyle Tucker, and I'm gonna make a short on this very soon, talking about the pros and the cons of Tucker or Bo Bichette. I mean, that's an MVP guy, right? Like he could be getting MVP votes if he comes over or wherever he goes on. He could be getting MVP votes because he is just that damn good. But we're gonna be following along with all those rumors, all those reports as they come out. If you haven't already done so, guys, just any thoughts about all this in the comments down below. Hit that like, smash that subscribe, hit that hype button too. $4 from upcoming YouTube members. Shouldn't thank you to all of our current YouTube members. You guys are amazing.
Guys, thank you so much for watching.
And as always,
go Jays, go!